Have you ever wondered what happens to the most expensive machine in human history? A $150 billion behemoth floating right above our heads the day we finally decide to turn our backs and abandon it? The brutal truth is, it won't just float up there forever like the stars. Behind all those shining montages of our greatest human achievements lies a predetermined death sentence, an irreversible end, just waiting to be triggered the moment that final airlock closes. If you've ever been curious about the ultimate decay of an allegedly immortal icon, today we are going to fast forward through time to witness the epic, tragic life cycle of the International Space Station, from the highest reaches of our sky down to the darkest abyss of our planet. Right at this very moment, roughly 250 miles above the Earth's surface, the ISS is hurtling through space at a breakneck speed, moving dozens of times faster than a speeding bullet. But imagine a day, maybe tomorrow, or maybe just a few short years from now, when the last spacecraft roars away, carrying the final crew back home. The life support systems are completely shut down. The gentle hum of the ventilation fans fades to nothing. The blinking lights on the control panels go dark, and the sound of human heartbeats is gone forever. That massive 400-ton structure, the most complex mechanical marvel ever assembled, is now nothing more than an empty, drifting metallic tomb, suspended in ultimate isolation. A lot of us naturally assume that space is a perfect vacuum, that anything left up there will just float in pristine condition for eternity. But reality is a lot less forgiving. Down in low Earth orbit, where the station resides, our atmosphere hasn't actually ended. There are still incredibly thin, trace amounts of gas molecules drifting around. They're invisible, but think of them like the wind resistance you feel when you stick your hand out the window of a car speeding down the highway. That friction might seem completely insignificant, but it is a relentless, degrading force. For decades, just to keep the station from falling out of the sky, astronauts have had to fire up thrusters or use visiting supply ships to constantly boost its orbit, exactly like how you have to keep pedaling a bicycle just to keep it from tipping over. But now, with its lifeblood cut off, without those life-saving orbital boosts, everything changes. Earth's gravity, this massive, invisible monster, starts reaching out to collect its debt. Hour by hour, minute by minute, the space station gets dragged lower, maybe by just a fraction of an inch each day at first. It's a descent so slow that the human eye couldn't even process a quiet, peaceful, but ultimately ruthless and inescapable death. The countdown to the destruction of our sky's greatest icon has officially begun, and this is only the beginning. Just 1 or 2 short years after humanity permanently departs, the space station's gleaming hull begins to suffer its first real torture at the hands of nature. In the past, to maintain its perfect, forward-facing posture toward the stars, the station relied on massive internal gyroscopes. But now, as the very last backup battery banks squeeze out their final drops of power, that mechanical heartbeat flatlines forever. Without a frame of reference, the station is like a tightrope walker who just dropped their balancing pole into the abyss. The colossal machine no longer glides majestically through its orbit, but begins to tumble, spinning awkwardly, blindly, and aimlessly through the pitch-black void. In those endless, tumbling loops, the metal behemoth is subjected to a brutal form of torture known as thermal stress. You see, out in space, there's no air to cushion or regulate temperature. Every 45 minutes, the station is violently tossed from the blinding, boiling heat of direct sunlight at over 250 degrees Fahrenheit, plunging straight into the freezing negative 250 degree shadow on the dark side of the Earth. Back in the day, cooling systems constantly hummed, pumping ammonia through miles of pipes to keep things perfectly stable. But now, everything is clinically dead. The massive alloy framework is forced to expand and contract with brutal intensity. Imagine continuously bending a metal paperclip back and forth thousands of times until it finally snaps. That is exactly what is happening here. Welds, joints, and entire habitation modules are constantly groaning, buckling, and fracturing under the silent devastation of thermal fatigue. And as Earth's gravity drags the station deeper into the fuzzy upper boundaries of our atmosphere, another invisible enemy suddenly awakens: atomic oxygen. Don't confuse this with the refreshing, life-giving air we breathe every day down here. At this altitude, raw solar radiation has ripped gas molecules apart, creating single, highly aggressive, and reactive oxygen atoms. They slam into the station's surface, eating away at everything like an invisible acid rain. The shiny, reflective thermal blankets that once lovingly protected the astronauts are now corroded, peeling away in massive, ugly chunks. But the most heartbreaking sight is probably the gigantic solar panels. Once stretched out proudly like shimmering angel wings to catch the light of life, they are now being shredded by the invisible teeth of the ionosphere, reduced to tattered, fibrous ribbons, flapping lifelessly into the void. Across that entire magnificent structure, stretching the length of an American football field, there is now only a chilling, absolute silence. A floating ghost town, stripped of all its power, completely robbed of its former glory. It is entirely helpless, surrendering its battered metallic body to the mindless physical forces trampling all over it. The collapse of an icon has officially begun. Slowly, but absolutely nothing can save it now. A few years later, as the death spiral drags this colossal machine deep below the 60-mile mark, the final hour of judgment arrives. The speed right now is an absolutely unimaginable number, nearly 17,500 miles per hour. At this terrifying velocity, interacting with the atmosphere isn't just regular wind resistance anymore. Think back to that feeling when a bicycle pump gets hot in your hands as you furiously compress air into a tire. Now, multiply that heat by millions. The air violently piling up in front of the space station literally doesn't have the time to move out of the way. It gets compressed so intensely that it creates a massive shockwave, generating temperatures that could melt solid rock, reaching well over 2,700 degrees Fahrenheit. The thin atmosphere surrounding the machine instantly ignites into a blinding halo of glowing plasma, wrapping the entire station in a blazing embrace of death. Earth, it seems, never welcomes its wandering children back home with a gentle hug, but rather with the most brilliant, ruthless cremation in the sky. Under that hellish heat, the hardened aluminum shell that once housed the laboratory modules, the former pride of human intellect, quickly softens and perishes, no different than a stick of butter thrown straight into a boiling skillet. The terrifying aerodynamic pressure completely crushes the already weakened framework. The pressurized oxygen and nitrogen tanks, along with the remnants of the internal battery banks, simply cannot handle the extreme thermal expansion. They detonate violently, creating silent, explosive flashes right on the edge of the ionosphere. The magnificent structure is ripped apart and crumpled, shattering into tens of thousands of massive fireballs, plowing through the night sky like a catastrophic meteor shower. But not everything is so easily reduced to ash. In the middle of this gigantic crucible, the core connecting trusses, the heavy pressure valves, and the engine blocks forged from titanium superalloys stubbornly fight back. With a melting point far beyond the scorching heat of the plasma halo, they punch right through the sea of fire, fiercely holding on to their physical form. These final pieces of the International Space Station's spine now transform into glowing red artificial meteorites, screaming as they tear through the clouds in an uncontrolled freefall. Watching from afar, it is a breathtakingly glorious death, a tragic, brilliant streak of light slashing across the dark canvas of the night. serving as a heartbreaking period to close out humanity's greatest era of reaching for the stars. Those glowing red titanium alloy, carrying the charred remnants of a civilization right through the atmosphere, finally slam into the freezing ocean's surface, hissing up massive columns of steam before sinking completely into the darkness. And then, as thousands and eventually millions of years quietly slip by, a new chapter of absolute silence officially begins. The resting place for these fragments isn't just some random patch of water. It is Point Nemo, the oceanic pole of inaccessibility, the most desolate, lonely place on the planet, as far away from any living landmass as you can possibly get. As they sink to a depth of over 13,000 feet at the bottom of the Pacific, sunlight permanently becomes a meaningless concept. Everything is swallowed whole by a thick, bone-chilling blackness. The water pressure down here is so punishing, you can imagine it as having the weight of hundreds of heavy dump trucks parked directly on your chest all at once. In the middle of this mindless, silent underworld, the giant metal slabs that once spread their wings among the stars now meekly lie flat in the mud, surrendering their bodies to the abyss. A lot of people might think that with its incredibly durable natural oxide armor, titanium could just shrug off the corrosive bite of salt water and survive down there forever. But Mother Nature always has more than enough patience. She doesn't destroy them with violence anymore, but through a slow, soft, yet terrifyingly relentless assimilation. Working on the timescale of geology, an endless, gloomy rain silently falls from the surface waters above something scientists call marine snow. But it's not white winter snow. It's made of billions upon billions of decaying remnants, the microscopic corpses of plankton and tiny specks of dust drifting down to the seafloor. This rain of decay falls without taking a single break for hundreds of thousands of years, blanketing the cold metal surfaces. It creates a layer of thick sludge, a fertile breeding ground for ancient anaerobic bacteria to come and take root. They silently weave slimy biofilms, patiently wrapping around and hugging every single sharp edge of the space station's former modules. In the blink of a cosmic eye, the marine snow and loose mud have piled up into a layer of sediment dozens of feet thick. Humanity's once great technological marvel is now entirely buried, tightly sealed underneath the ocean floor's heavy cloak. Not a single creature, not a single photon of light can reach it, and no one would ever be able to recognize the shape of the scientific machine that once shocked the world. They are now nothing more than a silent metallic fossil, a tiny, forgotten geological anomaly. The vast, melancholic expanse of the ocean has slowly swallowed the greatest pride of the sky, a quiet but absolute erasure, hiding away every last trace of our existence deep within the endless mud. And then, as 10 million and eventually hundreds of millions of agonizingly long years pass by, even that dark tomb at the bottom of the ocean turns out not to be the final stop. Our Earth has never been just a giant, silent rock. It is actually a massive, living machine with a heartbeat that stretches across millennia. The planet's crust is made up of countless colossal tectonic plates, constantly sliding, grinding, and churning, exactly like a massive, relentless conveyor belt. That block of sediment hugging those ancient titanium ruins is slowly, inevitably, dragged by this seafloor conveyor belt toward a subduction zone, a brutal boundary where an oceanic plate is forced to bend and violently dive straight underneath a continental plate. Millimeter by millimeter, the fragmented remains of our space age are swallowed whole, dragged right back down into the deep, churning stomach of the planet. As they plunge into the Earth's fiery mantle, hundreds of miles deep, every single rule of the surface world becomes completely meaningless. Down in this primordial forge, crushed beneath the unimaginable weight of billions of tons of rock, and subjected to the raging, molten heat of swirling magma that can reach thousands of degrees, the final boundary of survival is broken. Even the most stubborn blocks of titanium, the super metal that once proudly defied the plasma fire of the upper atmosphere, finally give up, turning soft and melting away completely. The atomic bonds that were once perfectly stamped into laboratory pressure valves and delicate mechanical frames slowly fall apart. They blend in, melting right back into the endless, red-hot river of magma, forever losing the shapes that human hands once so carefully crafted. In the vast, empty void of deep time, the complete erasure of the International Space Station might leave you feeling a little empty, maybe even a little heartbroken. But if you take a step back and look at the bigger picture, it's actually a beautiful, comforting thought, the absolute perfect ending to the ultimate cycle of existence. Those metal atoms were once diligently dug out of the Earth's crust by our own hands, forged through the fires of human knowledge and ambition to become a magnificent shield, protecting fragile life in the terrifying expanse of space. And now they are simply finishing a very long journey, returning to their origins, giving back exactly what was borrowed from Mother Earth. Humanity's most sophisticated technological masterpiece is, when it comes down to it, just a tiny ripple, a temporary physical form borrowed for a fleeting blink in the cosmic history of our planet. Everything is born from stardust, borrows its strength from the Earth, and finally, peacefully dissolves back into the flow of magma, waiting for a day in eternity when it might just be ready to be molded into something completely new.